right? So these are the different types of landfill based on the configuration or how you are going to construct, right? So first one is trench landfill. That means wherein you will try to construct the landfill below the ground level. That means so we will try to place the waste in this landfill and just you will cover it, right? When you finish it, so almost it is flush with the more or less horizontal level. Right? This type of landfill is a trench landfill, right? Next is area landfill. So it's the landfill which you will construct generally above the ground, right? So here the waste you will dump in layers and other things that we will discuss later. And generally, so this is above the ground. And the third type is a slope landfill where there is a hilly area, right? So you will try to make something like benches here, right? So these are the benches. You will make it a benches something like this, and you will fill it, and so you will place a cover at the top, right? So this is called a slope landfill. This type of classification is purely based on whether you are laying the landfill below the ground or above the ground, or sometimes so you can have partially, right? You can say fourth is partially below and partially above, right? So it is something like this. So of course it will have the components. I am not focusing on the components. So the liner, cover, all those things will be there, but it looks something like this. Now if you see, so this is partially above and partially below ground level, right? So this is the third one, and this is this type, right? So generally, this is one way of classification of landfills. Now, can you say what are the advantages or disadvantages of these landfills? Any of you? Just by seeing the configuration. What is the advantage of trench landfill? Just see the configuration. Right? Now, when you have all these options, which one you will prefer? Right? Generally, so you should be in a position to tell what is the advantage and disadvantage of trench landfill. Anyone?
I think the matter won't be scattered level
Yes.
in trench landfill.
I'm not getting. Just say a bit loudly.
The matter cannot be disturbed in trench landfill.
It's not clear what you are saying. Right? Anybody else? Just you see, that means when we are saying advantage, disadvantage means you have to compare with the other methods. So these are, let us say, 4 methods which I am saying. You first discard fourth. Now you focus on, let's say, first and second, right? Trench landfill and area landfill, right? Now if you compare these two, can you highlight some of the advantages and disadvantages? Advantage of trench landfill is you are going
Surface area.
Yes.
Surface area of the trench landfill is less compared to area landfill.
Surface area is lesser.
Yes, sir. Like on the top of the ground.
No, same quantity you can make it above the ground or below the ground. So, right. One of the advantage is that means whatever the waste which you are trying to bury, right? So you are not going to disturb above the ground or it won't obstruct, right? You don't have any feeling that there is a something you are filling above the ground because whatever you are dumping, so that will be more or less below the ground, right? So from the aesthetic point of view, so trench landfill is good, right? It looks good, right? And when you close it, so more or less it looks like a natural ground, right? After closing with a cover, and if you keep in grass, turfing, other things, so it looks still beautiful, right? That is the advantage. Now, what is the disadvantage? Anyone? Anybody? It is a disadvantage. Disadvantage of trench landfill. So any landfill will generate leachate. That is inevitable, right? Only the quantity of leachate may be vary, but leachate generation is quite natural, right? So if there is any leachate generated, so if there is any leakage, right? So that will generally go and mixes with the groundwater. So here it is a bit difficult to identify the leakage, and even if you identify that there is certain amount of leakage, so it is very difficult to uh, stop that leakage, because since it is below the ground, so it is not possible to identify the leakage. That is first disadvantage. Second disadvantage is, so generally the topography, if you see the topography of surrounding JNTU, or let's say most of Hyderabad, right, as you go below the ground level, so coarse fraction goes on increases. Finer soil will be at the top. As you go on removing the top soil, you will get coarser material at just at few meters, maybe 2 meters, 3 meters, you will get a whitish type, moram type soil. Generally, locally they will call it as a moram soil, right? So when you classify, it comes under SM soil. So as you go deep, so there is a possibility of more permeability in the soil, right? So permeability at the top is less as you excavate below the ground level. So there is a possibility of increase in permeability. So as you go deep, and if there is any leakage at the bottom, so since here the more pervious soil, it is it quickly reaches the groundwater table, right? And if you can see some more points, these are the major points. Now, so if you go to the area landfill, whatever the disadvantages here, that will become advantages. Now, advantage will become disadvantage. So these two are completely reversed. Right now, if you see this, so the major advantage of trench landfill is, so you are trying to bury the waste, and it looks more or less a natural ground, right? Something like this. Whereas here, so you are something like dumping, so it will be like a huge hill, right? So it looks something odd, right? There is a major aesthetically, it there will be some disturbance. But whatever the disadvantages, just now we discussed in trench landfill, so that will be advantage. Since it is above the ground level, so here the chances of leakage will be less, and since it follows the natural topography, even so the draining of this generated leachate is also easy, right? So that is the advantage. So these two are completely reverse. And coming to the third one, so here this is a natural hilly soil, and you want to dump, right? Now recently, Ramki Enviro engineers, they are dumping waste in Vishakhapatnam. So in a hilly area, something like this. So their topography is a hilly area is there. So they are trying to make benches something like this levels, and so they will start filling, right? First layers here, number of layers, right? And afterwards again, so layer by layer, something like this, right? And they will go on filling, right? So here also you will have cells and other things, and so they will cap it. Of course, here also you will have a liner and a cap. In all these cases, you will have bottommost will be liner, topmost part will be the cover. Both are liner or cover are like impermeable barriers, right? So that is regarding this. And the last one, fourth one is nowadays. So majority of the municipalities and other things, they are preferring this fourth option, right? So here partially it will be below the ground and partially above the ground. So now when you compare with the first and second, right? So when you are comparing with these two, so you are taking some advantages and some disadvantages of both, right? So here, when you are going for, let's say, if you want to go for the first type, so you would have got a cover something like this, right? Yeah, let us assume this is a cover. So that means, so here you are utilizing so much of volume, right? This is a huge quantity. So that means per unit area, you can store more waste because cost of land is high. Especially you need landfills in cities. So in cities, the land cost is huge. So that's why you should try to utilize to the maximum extent. So that's why, so you may extend 10-15 meters above the ground and 15 meters below the ground, and total will be 30 meters, right? So otherwise, so you would have got only half of this. Either if you go for trench or area landfill, so that means whatever you are preferring, so it may be around 60% volume of this one, right? Because area is fixed. So this is the advantage in the partially above and partially below the ground landfills. So this is one way of classifying, right, based on the configuration. So this is based on configuration, we are classifying. And another way of classification is, so hazardous waste, non-hazardous waste. Right? So here non-hazardous means the waste generally which is, can you give what are the non-hazardous waste? Non-hazardous waste landfills. Anyone?
Domestic waste landfill.
Yeah, domestic waste, right? So you can say domestic waste, or you can say sanitary landfills. Domestic waste or sanitary landfills. Any other?